The champagne had barely been poured when Lady Kiera Cameron disappeared. One moment, she stood beneath the palace's crystal chandeliers, her emerald gown shimmering like water under firelight, her hand resting delicately in the king's palm as he announced their engagement to 300 guests. The next, she was gone. The ballroom whispered first. Then it roared. They found her an hour later in General Nash Doyle's private winter garden, barefoot, bleeding, her carefully pinned hair falling in dark waves across her shoulders. Her silk gloves were torn. Her gown was stained with mud and something darker. Nash stood 3 feet away, perfectly still, his uniform jacket discarded on the frozen ground. His hands were covered in her blood. Neither of them spoke. The guards who discovered them said the general didn't resist. He simply looked at Kiera just once, with an expression they couldn't name, and then allowed himself to be taken. She said nothing. Not to the guards, not to the king's advisors, not to the priests who tried to coax confession from her trembling lips. By sunrise, the rumors had already poisoned the court. Treason, seduction, violence, madness. But the king did not execute Nash. He did not strip him of rank. He did not even question him publicly. And that more than the blood, more than the scandal, more than Kiera's silence that terrified the kingdom, because it meant the truth was worse than the crime. Kiera had always known she would marry power. She had been raised for it, trained in the quiet, lethal art of aristocratic performance since childhood, how to smile without warmth, how to lower her gaze at precisely the right moment, how to make men believe they had chosen her, when in truth, she had chosen them first. The Cameron name was old. Older than the current monarchy, older than the war that had fractured the Eastern kingdoms. Her family controlled the richest agricultural territories in the realm, the river ports, the grain supply that fed the capital through every winter. Marrying her meant controlling the kingdom's survival. She had understood this since she was 12. What she had not understood until 3 days before the engagement announcement was that marrying her also meant ending her life. The letter had been tucked inside a book of poetry, unsigned, written in a hand she didn't recognize. The king does not marry women he intends to keep. Your mother learned this too late. Leave or accept that your wedding night will be your last. She had burned the letter immediately, but the truth in it stayed, coiling around her ribs like cold wire. Her mother had died 6 months after marrying into an allied noble house. A riding accident, they had said. Tragic. Unavoidable. Kiera had been 4 years old. She didn't remember her mother's face anymore. Only the silence that followed her death. The way her father stopped speaking her name. The way the servants wouldn't meet Kiera's eyes when she asked why Mama never came home. If the letter was true, if the king intended to marry her, absorb her family's power, and then quietly erase her, then she had 3 choices. Run. Marry him anyway. Or fight. Running meant losing everything her family had built. Marrying him meant dying elegantly. Fighting meant finding someone powerful enough to stand between her and a king. There was only one man in the kingdom who fit that description. General Nash Doyle. The king's hound. The winter wolf. The man who had never lost a battle, never disobeyed an order, never shown mercy on a battlefield. He was feared more than loved. Worshipped by soldiers. Watched carefully by the nobility. Untouchable. Unreachable. And he had been staring at her from across ballrooms for 7 years. Kiera found him 2 nights before the engagement celebration. She shouldn't have known where his private quarters were, but aristocratic women learned to map palaces the way generals mapped war zones. Every corridor, every locked door, every servant's route. She wore a dark cloak, no jewelry, her hair hidden beneath the hood. When she knocked, he didn't answer immediately. When he finally opened the door, he looked at her with an expression she had never seen on him before. Not surprise, not anger, resignation. Lady Cameron, he said quietly. His voice was low, controlled, edged with something that sounded almost like pain. You should not be here. I know. If anyone sees you, no one will. His jaw tightened. His hand remained on the doorframe, blocking her entry. What do you want? She met his gaze. Held it. I want you to tell me the truth about my mother's death." Something flickered across his face. Briefly, violently, then it was gone. "Go home, Kira." It was the first time he had ever used her given name. "I can't," she whispered. "Not until you tell me if the king killed her." Silence. Heavy, suffocating. His hand fell from the doorframe. "Come inside," he said. "Quickly." The room was sparse, military. A desk covered in maps, a single chair, a narrow bed that looked like it had never been slept in. He closed the door behind her and stood with his back to it, arms crossed, watching her with the same dangerous stillness he carried on battlefields. "Why do you think I would know anything about your mother?" he asked. "Because you were 17 when she died. You were already in the king's inner circle, already his favorite soldier." She stepped closer. "And because every time someone mentions her name in court, you leave the room." His expression didn't change, but his breathing did. "That doesn't mean—" "Did he kill her? Kira, did he kill her?" "Yes." The word hung between them like a blade. She felt her knees weaken, felt the floor tilt. Nash moved before she could fall. His hands caught her arms, steadying her, and the warmth of his touch was so unexpected, so devastating, that she nearly pulled away. "I'm sorry," he said, and his voice cracked on the words. "I'm sorry. I should have." "Why didn't you stop him?" His hands tightened on her arms. "I was 17. I had no rank, no authority. I didn't even know what he had planned until after it was done." "And now?" She looked up at him. "Now you have rank. Now you have authority. Now you're the only man in this kingdom he's afraid of." "He's not afraid of me." "Yes, he is." Her voice was shaking. "He's terrified of you. Why else would he keep you close? Why else would he give you command of every army, every war, every execution?" Nash's gaze darkened. "Because I'm useful." "Because you're dangerous." "Kira, he's going to kill me, Nash." The words came out broken, raw, the same way he killed my mother. "He'll marry me, take my family's land, and then I'll have an accident, a fall, a illness, something quiet." His hands were trembling now. She could feel it. "I came here," she whispered, "because I don't want to die, and because you're the only person in this palace who might actually care if I do." He released her so suddenly she stumbled back. "You don't know what you're asking," he said, his voice barely controlled. "I'm asking you to help me." "I can't." "You mean you won't?" "I mean, if I do what you're asking, if I protect you, if I stand between you and the king, it will start a war. The nobility will fracture. The military will divide. Thousands of people will die. And if you don't," she said, "I will." Silence. He turned away from her, his shoulders rigid, his hands curling into fists at his sides. "You should leave," he said. "Nash. Now." She didn't move. He turned back to face her, and the look in his eyes, wild, desperate, full of something too dangerous to name, made her breath catch. "Do you have any idea," he said slowly, "how many years I have spent trying not to look at you? How many rooms I've left because you were in them? How many nights I've—" He stopped, exhaled. "You think I don't care if you die?" "Kiera, if you die, I will burn this kingdom to the ground." Her heart stopped. "Then help me," she whispered. He stared at her, his control cracking, breaking. "If I help you," he said, his voice rough, "there's no going back. Do you understand that? Once I make this choice, once I choose you over him, everything ends. My loyalty, my honor, everything I've built. I know. And you're asking me to do it anyway." "Yes." He crossed the space between them in 2 strides. His hands framed her face, rough and reverent and shaking, and for one breathless moment she thought he was going to kiss her. Instead, he pressed his forehead to hers and whispered, "If I do this, if I protect you, you will never be free of me. Do you understand? I won't let you go. Not to him. Not to anyone." Her hands rose to grip his wrists. "Then don't let me go," she said. He kissed her, and the world ended quietly. They didn't hear the door open. They didn't hear the guards enter. By the time they realized they had been discovered, it was too late. Kiera's lips were swollen. Her carefully pinned hair had come undone. Nash's hands were still tangled in it. The guards stared. One of them was holding a blade. Nash moved instantly, stepped between Kiera and the weapons, his entire body a shield, but the damage was already done. "General Doyle," the lead guard said slowly. His eyes flicked to Kiera. "The king requests your presence." "I'll come willingly," Nash said. His voice was calm. "Steady. Let her leave first." "She stays." "She had nothing to do with—" "She stays." Kiera's pulse roared in her ears. This was it. The scandal. The unraveling. The beginning of the end. Nash's hand found hers in the darkness. Squeezed once. A promise. They were separated immediately. Kiera was taken to a locked chamber in the eastern wing. No servants, no visitors. Just silence, and the slow, creeping certainty that she had destroyed everything. She waited for the king to summon her. He didn't. Instead, he sent his chancellor, a thin, cold man with ink-stained fingers and a voice like frost. "Lady Cameron," he said, "you have placed His Majesty in a difficult position." She said nothing. "The engagement will proceed as planned." Her stomach dropped. "General Doyle will be dealt with privately." "What does that mean?" The Chancellor smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "It means, my lady, that you will marry the king in 3 days. And if you speak one word of tonight's indiscretion, the general will be executed for treason before sunrise." Her hands clenched in her lap. "Do we have an understanding?" She forced herself to nod. "Good." He turned to leave, then paused. "His Majesty also wanted me to convey a message." "What message?" "That he has always admired your mother's elegance," the Chancellor's smile widened, "and that he hopes you inherited her sense of duty." The door closed. Kiera sat in the dark and tried not to scream. If you have ever loved someone you were not allowed to love, if you have ever made a choice that destroyed you slowly, then you already understand why Kiera could not walk away. Stay close to Power and Silence Whispers. Subscribe before the next chapter pulls you under. Turn on notifications, because this story does not wait. And tell me this, if protecting someone you loved meant becoming the villain in someone else's story, would you do it? The engagement celebration was flawless. Kiera wore white silk and emeralds. Her smile was radiant. Her hand rested lightly in the king's as he toasted their future before the entire court. No one mentioned Nash. No one mentioned the Winter Garden. No one mentioned the rumor that the general had been confined to his quarters under armed guard. The court pretended nothing had happened. That was how power worked. Reality was whatever the king said it was. Kiera played her part beautifully. She danced. She laughed. She accepted congratulations from women who had once competed for the king's attention and now looked at her with pity. She did not look for Nash. She did not ask about him. She buried everything she felt beneath layers of aristocratic ice and waited for the night to end. It didn't. Halfway through the celebration, the king leaned close and whispered, "You're handling this beautifully, my dear." She kept smiling. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I know tonight must be difficult for you." Her pulse spiked. "I don't know what you mean." His hand tightened on hers. Not painfully, just enough. "Don't insult my intelligence, Kiera." She forced herself to meet his gaze. He was handsome, cold, elegant in the way predators were elegant. "I know you went to him," the king said quietly. "I know what you were looking for." Her throat closed. "I also know," he continued, "that Nash Doyle is the most loyal man I have ever commanded, which is why I'm going to give you both a chance to prove that loyalty." "How?" The king smiled. "By letting him watch you marry me." Nash was released from confinement 2 hours before the wedding. He was given new orders. Simple, clear. He was to stand at the front of the cathedral, in full military dress, as the king's personal guard. He was to witness the ceremony. He was to do nothing. It was the cruelest punishment the king could have devised. And Nash accepted it without a word. The morning of the wedding, Kiera stood in her chambers, while 3 servants laced her into a gown that felt like a burial shroud. White silk, gold embroidery, a veil so long it trailed behind her like a ghost. She looked at herself in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. Her hands were steady. Her face was calm. Inside, she was screaming. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Enter," she said. The door opened, and Nash stepped inside. The servants gasped. One of them dropped the jewelry box she was holding. "Leave us," Nash said. His voice was quiet, controlled, absolutely terrifying. The servants fled. The door closed. Kiera turned slowly. He looked devastated. His uniform was immaculate. His jaw was tight. His hands were clenched at his sides like he was physically restraining himself from reaching for her. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "I know. If they find you, I don't care." "Nash, I need you to know," he said, his voice breaking, "that I tried. I went to the king. I offered him everything, my rank, my loyalty, my life, if he would let you go." Her breath caught. "He refused." "Of course he did. He told me," Nash continued, "that if I truly loved you, I would let you become queen. That I would step aside and let you have the life you were born for." Tears burned behind her eyes. "He's wrong," Nash whispered. "Isn't he?" She crossed the room, took his face in her hands. "I don't want to be queen," she said. "I never did." His control shattered. He kissed her like a man drowning. His hands tangled in her hair, ruining the carefully arranged curls. His mouth was desperate, worshipful, full of everything he had never been allowed to say. She kissed him back just as fiercely. For one perfect, impossible moment, the world outside the room didn't exist. Then the cathedral bells began to ring. They broke apart, gasping. "I have to go," she whispered. "I know. I'm sorry. Don't apologize." His thumb brushed her cheek. "Just survive. Promise me you'll survive." "I promise." He stepped back, straightened his uniform, became the general again. "I'll be waiting," he said. And then he left. The wedding was a nightmare dressed as a fairy tale. The cathedral was filled with white roses and gold silk. Every noble family in the kingdom had sent representatives. The pews were packed. Kiera walked down the aisle alone. Her father was dead. She had no brothers, no one to give her away. She was a Cameron. She had always belonged to herself. Until today. The king waited at the altar, smiling. And just beyond him, standing perfectly still in his black and silver uniform, was Nash. Their eyes met. Held. She saw everything he couldn't say. "I love you. I'm sorry. Forgive me." She looked away before her composure broke. The priest began speaking. She barely heard him. The king took her hand. His grip was possessive. Practiced. "You look beautiful," he murmured. She said nothing. "Kiera," he prompted. "Thank you, Your Majesty." "Say my name." She forced herself to meet his gaze. "Thank you, Alexander." He smiled. The priest continued. And then, just as he began the vows, a scream tore through the cathedral. Everyone turned. A woman in the back pews had collapsed. Guards rushed toward her. Chaos erupted. The king's hand tightened on Kiera's. "Stay here." He moved toward the commotion. Kiera stood frozen at the altar. And then she felt it. A hand. Warm. Steady. Closing around her wrist. She turned. "Nash, come with me," he whispered. "What?" "Now." He pulled her toward the side entrance of the cathedral, a servant's door hidden behind a stone column. "Nash, we can't. I'm not letting you marry him. You'll be executed." "I don't care." They ran. They made it as far as the winter garden before the guards found them. Kiera's veil had come loose. Her gown was torn. Her feet were bleeding. She had lost her shoes somewhere between the cathedral and the garden gates. Nash stood between her and 6 armed soldiers, his hand on his sword, his breathing steady despite the fact that he was vastly outnumbered. "Stand down, General," one of the guards said carefully. "Oh no. The king has ordered your arrest." "Then tell the king," Nash said softly, "to come arrest me himself." The guards hesitated. They feared Nash more than they feared disobeying orders. And that hesitation cost them. Because in that moment, while they wavered, Kiera made a choice. She stepped out from behind Nash, raised her hands. "I'll go," she said, willingly. "Just let him live." "Kiera, no. Please." She looked at the guards. "I'll return to the cathedral. I'll marry the king. Just don't hurt him." Nash grabbed her wrist. "What are you doing?" She turned to face him. Her eyes were full of tears. "I'm saving you," she whispered. "I don't want to be saved." "I know." She smiled. "It broke his heart. But I need you alive. Even if I can't have you." She pulled free of his grip, walked toward the guards. And Nash, controlled, disciplined, unbreakable Nash, fell to his knees in the frozen grass and let out a sound that didn't belong to any human language. The guards didn't take her back to the cathedral. They took her to the king's private study. He was waiting, standing by the window, hands clasped behind his back, calm. Too calm. "Kiera," he said without turning. "Sit." She didn't move. He sighed, turned to face her. "I am trying," he said slowly, "to be patient with you. But you are making it very difficult. Then let me go." "I can't do that." "Why not?" Her voice cracked. "You don't love me. You don't even want me. You want my family's land, my name, my resources. You can have all of it. Just let me leave." The king studied her. Then he crossed the room, stopped inches from her. "You're right," he said quietly. "I don't love you." Relief and devastation crashed over her simultaneously. "But I do need you," he continued. "And not just for your family's resources." "Then why?" He smiled. "Because Nash Doyle loves you. And as long as I have you, I have him." Her blood turned to ice. "You see," the king said, "Nash is the most dangerous man in my kingdom. The soldiers worship him. The people trust him. If he ever decided to challenge me, if he ever turned his armies against the throne, I would lose. He would never. He ran from a cathedral with you in his arms, Kiera. He abandoned his post. He defied my direct orders. He committed treason." The king's smile widened. "For you." She couldn't breathe. "So no," the king said. "I will not let you go. Because the moment I do, Nash stops being controllable. And I cannot allow that. You're a monster." "I'm a king." He stepped back. "Now, you have two choices. Marry me willingly, and Nash lives. Refuse, and I will have him executed for treason before sunset." "That's not a choice." "No," the king agreed. "It's not." She married him 3 hours later, in a private ceremony, no guests, no celebration, just a priest, 2 witnesses, and the suffocating weight of inevitability. Nash was not there. He had been locked in the palace dungeons. The king told her this with a smile. The wedding night was worse than she imagined. Not because the king hurt her. He didn't. He was gentle, methodical, disturbingly patient. But every touch felt like theft. Every kiss felt like betrayal. And when it was over, when he finally left her alone in the massive, cold marriage bed, she curled into herself and wept until she had nothing left. She didn't see Nash for 6 weeks. The king kept him imprisoned, not in the dungeons that would have caused unrest among the military, but in a locked tower room under constant guard. He was fed, cared for, treated with all the respect his rank demanded. But he was not free, and everyone knew why. The court whispered. The soldiers grew restless. And Kiera, now queen in title, prisoner in truth, began to plan. She started slowly, attending court functions, smiling at the right people, learning who hated the king, who feared him, who might be persuaded to act against him. It took weeks. But eventually, she found them. A small group of nobles who had lost family members to the king's ambition. A handful of military commanders who resented his control over Nash. A few younger aristocrats who believed the kingdom deserved better. They met in secret, in hidden rooms, during carefully orchestrated social calls. And Kiera, elegant, untouchable Kiera, became the center of a conspiracy. The plan was simple. Free Nash. Provide him with evidence of the king's crimes, assassinations, stolen lands, Falsified orders? Let him take that evidence to the military council. Let the soldiers choose their loyalty. If it worked, the king would be forced to abdicate. If it didn't, they would all be executed for treason. Kiera didn't care anymore. She had spent 6 weeks as a queen in a cage. She would rather die fighting than live like this. The night they freed Nash, the palace was hosting a masquerade ball. The perfect distraction. While the court danced and drank and played at intrigue, Kiera's conspirators moved through the shadows. They disabled the guards, picked the locks, and led Nash down a hidden servant's staircase to a waiting carriage. Kiera was supposed to stay at the ball. She was supposed to maintain her alibi. But the moment she heard he was free, the moment one of her allies whispered the news in her ear, she abandoned the ballroom and ran. She found him in the courtyard. He was standing beside the carriage, surrounded by her conspirators, looking like a man who had just been resurrected. When he saw her, he went still. Kiera. She crossed the distance between them and kissed him. Hard, desperate, unrestrained. He responded instantly, his arms wrapping around her, pulling her close, holding her like she might disappear again. "You need to leave," she whispered against his mouth. "Now, before they realize you're gone. Come with me." "I can't." "Yes, you can. If I leave, he'll know it was me. He'll execute everyone who helped you." Her hands framed his face. "You have to go alone. I'm not leaving you with him. You don't have a choice." "Kiera, go," her voice broke. "Please, take the evidence, bring it to the council, end this. And then," she swallowed, "and then come back for me." He stared at her. Then he kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her mouth. "I will come back for you," he whispered. "I swear it." And then he was gone. The king discovered the escape within the hour. He did not rage. He did not shout. He simply summoned Kiera to his chambers. She went, knowing what was coming. He was standing by the fire when she entered. "You freed him," the king said calmly. She didn't deny it. "You conspired against me. You risked everything." He turned to face her. "Why?" "Because I love him." The king laughed. It was a cold, joyless sound. "Do you know what your love has cost you, Kiera?" She said nothing. "By tomorrow," the king said, "Nash will bring his evidence to the council. They will deliberate. They will likely side with him. He's more beloved than I ever was." Her heart pounded. "And when they demand my abdication," the king continued, "I will agree, peacefully, publicly." Relief nearly brought her to her knees. "But," the king added, "there is a condition." Her stomach dropped. "What condition?" The king smiled. "That you stay married to me." "What?" "Nash can have his evidence. He can have his victory. He can even have the kingdom for all I care." The king stepped closer. "But he cannot have you." "That's insane." "That's the price." The king's voice was soft, deadly. "If Nash wants to avoid a civil war, if he wants to protect the people he claims to care about, he will accept my terms. And you, my darling queen, will remain my wife, publicly, permanently." Kiera stared at him. "You see," the king said, "I may lose my throne, but I will never lose the satisfaction of knowing that every night Nash Doyle will go to bed knowing you belong to me." She slapped him. The sound echoed through the room. The king didn't flinch. He simply touched his cheek, smiled, and said, "I'll take that as acceptance." If you have ever felt the world close around you, if you have ever fought for something and watched it turn to ash in your hands, then you understand what Kiera felt in that moment. This story does not forgive easily. It does not offer mercy, but it offers truth. Stay with Power and Silence Whispers. Subscribe. Turn on notifications. Let this story consume you the way it has consumed them. And answer me this. If love required you to destroy yourself, would you still call it love? The council met at dawn. Nash presented his evidence with the cold precision of a general presenting battle plans. Assassinations disguised as accidents, lands seized under false treaties, orders forged in the king's name to justify wars that served only his ambition. The evidence was damning. Irrefutable. By midday, the council voted unanimously to demand the king's abdication. Nash should have felt victorious. Instead, he felt hollow. Because when the king's terms were delivered abdication in exchange for the queen remaining his wife, Nash understood exactly what had happened. He had won the kingdom and lost the only thing that mattered. The confrontation happened in the throne room. The king sat on his throne, calm and elegant, as Nash entered flanked by armed soldiers. "General Doyle," the king said pleasantly, "congratulations on your victory." Nash's jaw tightened. "Where is she?" "My wife? She's resting. The last few days have been exhausting for her." "She's not your wife." The king raised an eyebrow. "The church and the law disagree. You forced her. I married her. Legally. Publicly. With her consent." The king smiled. "You were there. You watched it happen." Nash took a step forward. Every soldier in the room tensed. "If you hurt her—" "I would never hurt her," the king interrupted. "I actually quite like Kiera. She's intelligent, resilient. She'll make an excellent queen. She doesn't want to be your queen." "And yet," the king said, "she chose to marry me. Twice, technically. Once in the cathedral, once in private. Both times to save your life." Nash's hands clenched into fists. "So here is what will happen," the king continued. "I will abdicate. You will take control of the military. The council will appoint a regent. The kingdom will stabilize. And Kira remains married to me." "No. Then I rescind my abdication." The king leaned back. "And we go to war. Your forces against mine. Thousands dead. The kingdom torn apart. All because you couldn't accept losing one woman." Nash's breathing was ragged. "What will it be, General?" the king asked softly. "The kingdom? Or her?" Nash chose the kingdom. He had to. He was a soldier, a protector. He couldn't justify a civil war, couldn't justify the deaths of thousands for his own happiness. So he accepted the king's terms. The abdication proceeded. The king stepped down. The council appointed a temporary regent, and Kiera remained the king's wife. She didn't see Nash for 3 weeks after the abdication. He was busy, reorganizing the military, stabilizing the government, ensuring the transition of power didn't collapse into chaos. She understood. But understanding didn't make the absence hurt less. She spent her days in the queen's chambers no longer a prisoner, but not quite free either. The former king lived in a separate wing of the palace now. He didn't visit her, didn't demand her presence, didn't touch her. He simply existed. A permanent reminder that she would never fully belong to herself. When Nash finally came to her, it was late at night. He didn't knock. He simply appeared in her chambers, disheveled and exhausted, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "Nash." He crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. Held her so tightly she could barely breathe. "I'm sorry," he whispered into her hair. "I'm so sorry. You did the right thing. I chose the kingdom over you." "I know." She pulled back just enough to look at him. "And I love you for it." His eyes were red. "I can't do this," he said. "I can't live in a world where you're married to him, where I see you in the palace and can't touch you." "Can't!" His voice broke. "I can't." "Then don't." He stared at her. "Leave," she whispered. "Take a commission in another kingdom. Start over. Forget me." "I will never forget you." "Then learn to live with it." Her hands framed his face. "Because I can't watch you destroy yourself over something we can't change. There has to be another way." "There isn't." "Kiera." She kissed him. Slow, tender, devastating. "Go," she whispered against his mouth. "Please." He didn't move. "If you stay," she said, "this will kill us both. So please, go." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her hands, and then finally he left. But he didn't leave the kingdom. He couldn't. Instead, he did something far more dangerous. He began investigating the king's past, looking for a legal loophole, a technicality, anything that could dissolve the marriage without plunging the kingdom into war. It took months, but eventually he found it, hidden in the royal archives, a marriage law from 2 generations prior. It stated that any royal marriage contracted under coercion or threat of death was legally void. Kiera had married the king to save Nash's life. That was coercion. That was void. Nash brought the evidence to the council in winter. The hearing took 3 days. The former king fought viciously, hired lawyers, called in favors, threatened political chaos. But the law was clear, and on the 3rd day, the council ruled in Nash's favor. The marriage was annulled. Kiera was free. She found out from a servant, a young girl who knocked on her door and whispered, "Your Majesty, the council has dissolved your marriage." Kiera sat down slowly. "What?" "You're free, my lady." Free! She hadn't heard that word in so long she had forgotten what it sounded like. Nash came to her that night. She was standing on her balcony, looking out over the snow-covered gardens, when she heard the door open behind her. She didn't turn. "They told me," she said quietly. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you myself. I didn't want to give you hope until I was certain." "You should have told me." "I know." Silence? "Then, what happens now?" she asked. He crossed the balcony, stood beside her. "That depends on you." She finally looked at him. He was thinner than she remembered, exhausted, but his eyes were full of something she hadn't seen in months. "Hope." "I'm not a queen anymore," she said. "I'm not powerful. I don't have status or land or—" "I don't care." "Nash." "I don't care," he repeated. "I never cared about any of that." "Then what do you want?" He took her hands. "I want you to marry me." Her breath caught. "Not for politics. Not for alliances. Not because anyone is forcing you." His voice was shaking. "I want you to marry me because you want to. Because you love me the way I love you." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I do," she whispered. "I do love you." He kissed her. Slow, reverent, full of every unspoken promise. When they finally broke apart, he pressed his forehead to hers and whispered, "Then marry me, please." She smiled. Yes. They married in spring, in a small chapel outside the capital. No crown, no court, no politics. Just them, and a handful of people who had fought beside them. Kiera wore a simple dress. Nash wore his uniform. And when the priest asked if she took this man to be her husband, she didn't hesitate. "I do." Years later, when people asked her about the scandal, the ruined engagement, the annulled marriage, the general who had defied a king, Kiera would smile and say, "Some love stories are quiet. Ours was not." And Nash, standing beside her, would take her hand and add, "But it was ours." If you believe that love is worth the ruin, that some people are worth the war, then you understand why this story exists. Power and Silence Whispers will return with another story soon, one that will consume you just as deeply. Subscribe, stay close, let these stories live in you the way they live in us. And tell me, if you had been Kiera, would you have run? Would you have fought? Or would you have done exactly what she did? Let me know in the comments. I'll be reading every one.
Silk stays cold on the skin, candles burning out. I remain your lady. You remain my king. Silk stays cold on the skin, candles burning out. Palace gates are closed, shadows stretching across the